In life, betrayal doesn't always come from strangers, it sometimes comes from those closest to us. This is the story of two beautiful sisters and a boy, raised in a humble home, yet shaken by jealousy, deceit, and a forbidden temptation that threatened to tear their family apart. Before we dive in, please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more powerful stories that touch the soul. The Smith family lived on the quieter side of town, in a small but decent house with a fenced yard that carried the scent of freshly cut grass in the summer. They were not rich, neither were they poor, they lived in that space people often called comfortable but average. Mr. Smith was a hard-working man who believed that honesty was the only wealth a man truly owned. His wife, Margaret, was the pillar of the home, a woman whose enviable character turned heads wherever she went. Her humility, patience, and kindness made her a model for young wives in their community. Together, they raised 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. Amelia, the eldest, was in her early 30s. Timid by nature, calm in spirit, and gentle with words, she was her mother's replica in both manner and values. She believed that life was best lived quietly, with peace rather than conflict. Then there was Veronica, 2 years younger. Where Amelia was calm, Veronica was willful; where Amelia was content, Veronica hungered for more. She was beautiful, daring, outspoken, and stubborn. From her childhood, she always wanted to be noticed, whether by her teachers, classmates, or men. Her fire made her mother worry, though she loved her dearly. And finally, there was Daniel, the youngest of the 3. 12 years separated him from Amelia, 10 from Veronica. But though young, Daniel was a boy full of promise. With eyes that carried both innocence and wisdom, he was often called a carbon copy of his father. He had his father's humor, his sense of justice, and a straightforward way of speaking that sometimes surprised even adults. "That boy will go far," neighbors often said. The 3 children walked different paths as they grew. Amelia and Veronica attended different schools, different colleges, and eventually lived very different lives. Amelia pursued stability, education, and respect. Veronica chased freedom, fun, and admiration. Daniel, though much younger, grew up watching his sisters carefully, learning silently from both their strengths and their flaws. At home, Margaret often gathered her children around the dinner table, using every meal as an opportunity to teach. "Integrity," she would say, "is what a man or woman does when no one is watching. Never lose yours." Amelia would nod, taking the words deeply into her heart. Daniel listened too, wide-eyed, as though engraving every syllable into his memory. Veronica, however, would roll her eyes, whispering under her breath, "Life is not that serious." Still, the love in the family was strong. Arguments rose like smoke, but they always disappeared before turning into fire. Mr. Smith often reminded them, "We are not rich in money, but we are rich in love. That is what holds us together." But time, as it always does, began to test the foundation of that love. Amelia, calm and focused, built her life with patience. She found a job she loved, lived without scandal, and eventually caught the attention of a young man with a bright future. Veronica, on the other hand, bounced between relationships, drawn more to excitement than commitment. Margaret worried, prayed, and corrected, but Veronica always smiled and said, "Don't worry, Mama. I'll be fine." Daniel remained the family's hope. He was growing fast, excelling in school, and showing signs of leadership. At 12, he spoke like a boy twice his age. He was the thread of joy that tied his parents' old age to fresh laughter. Yet, within the Smith home, a silent contrast was already forming, a contrast between calm and chaos, integrity and recklessness, patience and desire. None of them knew that the choices each child made would one day collide in a storm strong enough to threaten everything Margaret and Mr. Smith had built with sweat, prayers, and tears. As Amelia prepared for marriage, the family gathered in joy, not knowing that shadows of betrayal were already lurking nearby. Amelia's wedding was the kind of celebration that left memories stamped on hearts for years. She married Michael Carter, a young man from a modest but respectable family. He was steady, disciplined, and forward-thinking, the type of man every parent prayed for their daughter. Michael's honesty and quiet charm made him loved not just by Amelia, but by her parents and even little Daniel, who admired him like an older brother. During the wedding, Margaret leaned close to her husband and whispered, "This one is different. He will take care of our daughter." Mr. Smith simply nodded, pride shining in his eyes. Amelia slipped into married life gracefully. Michael treated her with tenderness, and together, they built their home on patience, prayer, and mutual respect. Neighbors often said their marriage was like a garden watered daily. Veronica's journey, however, followed a different road. 2 years after Amelia's marriage, she met Raymond, a handsome, ambitious man who promised her the world. Raymond had good prospects, a rising career, and a sharp mind. But he also had an intuition that Veronica's restless spirit might someday bring trouble. Still, love, or what felt like it, swept them into marriage. At first, things were beautiful. Veronica loved the attention she received as a newlywed. Raymond adored her beauty and fiery character. But soon, cracks began to show. Veronica was not content with stability, she craved excitement. She dressed to impress strangers, stayed out late with friends, and entertained admirers who whispered promises she had no business listening to. Raymond tried to reason with her. "Veronica, you're my wife. My heart belongs to you. Why risk everything for thrills that don't last?" But she would laugh, brush it off, and accuse him of being insecure. The breaking point came when rumors spread through town, rumors of Veronica seen in places no faithful wife should be. Raymond confronted her, his heart torn between love and anger. "If you can't honor this marriage, then what are we doing?" Instead of remorse, Veronica's pride flared. She packed her things in defiance, refusing to admit fault. In the bitter silence that followed, Raymond made the hardest decision of his life. He filed for separation, leaving Veronica with custody of their 3-year-old son, Ethan. It was a scandal that broke Margaret's heart. How could she throw away her marriage like a piece of cloth, she wept to her husband. But as always, Margaret chose compassion over condemnation. "She's still our daughter. We cannot abandon her." With nowhere else to turn, Veronica showed up at Amelia's doorstep, holding little Ethan by the hand. Amelia, though disappointed, welcomed her sister in. "This is your home too, at least until you find your feet again," she said gently. Michael, standing behind his wife, nodded in agreement. "We'll help you however we can." Life in Amelia's house shifted. Veronica and her son moved into the guest room. At first, it felt almost like old times, the sisters laughing together, Daniel visiting often, little Ethan bringing joy with his innocence. Amelia cooked for everyone, Michael provided with patience, and Margaret stopped by with encouragement. But beneath the surface, subtle tensions brewed. Veronica, still restless, found herself noticing things she should not. Michael's steady hand, his quiet strength, the way he treated Amelia with love and respect, it stirred something dangerous inside her. Instead of gratitude, envy crept into her heart. She told herself it was harmless. Just a thought. Just admiration. But as days turned into weeks, admiration twisted into desire. She started dressing more boldly around the house, lingering longer in conversations with Michael, laughing too loudly at his jokes. Michael noticed. At first, he dismissed it as his imagination. After all, this was his wife's sister, the woman they had opened their home to. But soon, the signs became clearer. The glances lingered. The touches seemed intentional. And when Amelia wasn't looking, Veronica's eyes held a question that should never have been asked. Michael found himself caught in a storm he never invited. His loyalty to Amelia was unshakable, but he also understood the fragile nature of trust between sisters. One word of suspicion could plant seeds of doubt that might never be erased. So he stayed silent. He prayed. And he hoped Veronica would come to her senses. But Veronica wasn't planning to stop. The game she was playing had only just begun. Shadows within the home. The Carters' home had always been a place of peace. Amelia filled it with warmth, the kind that smelled like fresh bread from the oven and echoed with quiet laughter. Michael worked hard, returning each evening to a wife who adored him and a family that respected him. For a while, even with Veronica's presence, harmony remained. But desire has a way of eroding peace, one silent crack at a time. At first, Veronica's gestures seemed harmless. She often praised Michael openly, calling him the perfect husband. She lingered near the kitchen doorway when he spoke, her eyes fixed too long. She complimented his shirts, his cologne, the way he carried himself. Amelia, ever trusting, thought nothing of it. To her, it was simply her sister being playful. Michael, however, was not blind. He noticed how Veronica's conversations drifted beyond ordinary. She would lean closer than necessary, her laughter spilling in waves designed for him alone. One evening, when Amelia had gone upstairs to put Ethan to bed, Veronica remained in the living room with Michael. "You know," she began, her voice low and deliberate, "Amelia is so lucky. Not every woman gets a man like you." Michael stiffened, pretending not to hear the undertone. "We're all blessed in different ways," he replied. But Veronica's eyes held something bold. "If you were mine," she stopped mid-sentence, her lips curving into a smile that sent warning bells through his mind. Michael stood abruptly, his voice calm but firm. "Veronica, let's not say things we'll regret. You're my wife's sister. I respect you, but I won't tolerate disrespect to Amelia, or this house." For a moment, silence hung between them. Veronica only smiled, almost amused by his resistance. "Relax, Michael. It was just a joke." But Michael knew it was no joke. Over the following weeks, the advances grew bolder. Veronica brushed against him accidentally when passing in the hallway. She leaned too close when handing him a plate at dinner. Once, she appeared in the living room late at night, dressed in silk pajamas, pretending she couldn't sleep. Michael's patience was tested, but he refused to yield. He carried her secret quietly, never breathing a word to Amelia. He feared the damage it could cause, the mistrust, the heartbreak between sisters. He chose silence, believing his restraint would protect his marriage. But Veronica mistook his silence for weakness. One afternoon, while Amelia was out shopping, Veronica cornered Michael in the garage. Her eyes were fierce, her tone daring. "Why do you pretend you don't want me? I see the way you look at me. You're a man, Michael. A strong man. Don't tell me you've never thought about it." Michael's face hardened. "Enough, Veronica. You're crossing a line you can't uncross. If you respect yourself at all, stop this now." But Veronica only smirked. "You think you can resist me forever? Every man breaks eventually." Michael took a step closer, his voice low, almost a whisper. "You're wrong. I'd rather throw you out of this house than betray my wife. Don't test me." For the first time, Veronica's confidence cracked. She hadn't expected such firmness. Yet instead of retreating, her willful nature doubled down. She began plotting, not just to win Michael, but to destroy the peace Amelia enjoyed. To Veronica, Amelia had always been the golden child, the one who earned their parents' admiration, the one with the stable marriage, the one whose life seemed blessed. Envy burned inside her. Why should Amelia have everything while she was left broken and abandoned? The forbidden flame in her heart was no longer about desire, it was about power. If she couldn't have Michael, she would ruin him. Michael, sensing the darkness in her persistence, began to act wisely. He started carrying a small voice recorder, tucking it into his pocket whenever Veronica was home. Every word, every suggestion, every dangerous advance, he captured them all. It wasn't fear that made him do it. It was foresight. He knew Veronica was reckless enough to create a storm, and he needed protection from the lies she was capable of spinning. But the more Veronica pushed and failed, the more frustrated she became. Late at night, lying in the guest room, she would stare at the ceiling, bitterness boiling in her veins. Amelia's laughter from the next room only fueled her resentment. "Let's see how perfect your life stays when the truth, or my version of it, comes out," she whispered to herself. The flame of desire had turned into a weapon of destruction. And Michael knew the worst was yet to come. Shadows within the home. Michael Carter had always believed that silence was the strongest form of maturity. But now, with Veronica's shadow stalking every corner of his home, silence began to feel like a fragile shield. He prayed often, asking for wisdom, asking for the strength to protect Amelia without crushing her trust. Veronica, on the other hand, was plotting. Desire had failed her. Charm had failed her. But she was not one to accept defeat. If she couldn't have Michael, she would destroy his image and, in the process, bring Amelia down with him. Her first attempt was subtle. One evening, as Amelia returned from visiting their parents, Veronica rushed into the living room, pretending to be flustered. She positioned herself close to Michael, pulling her cardigan loosely over her shoulders as if covering herself. "Michael, don't, please stop," she said in a loud, trembling voice just as Amelia opened the front door. Amelia froze, her grocery bags nearly slipping from her hands. Her eyes darted between her husband and her sister. Michael's heart pounded, but his face remained steady. "What are you talking about, Veronica?" he asked firmly. Veronica blinked, caught off guard by his calmness. She had expected him to stumble, to defend himself in panic. Amelia frowned, confused, and before Veronica could twist the story further, Michael spoke clearly. "Amelia, your sister is making dangerous jokes I've warned her about before. And it stops tonight." The air grew heavy. Amelia looked from one to the other. Veronica forced a nervous laugh, trying to mask her failure. "Oh, come on, I was only teasing. Don't take everything so seriously." But the seed of suspicion had been planted. Over the next few days, Veronica doubled her efforts. She arranged accidents, falling against Michael when Amelia entered the room, leaving her belongings in his study, and once even sending herself suggestive texts before quickly deleting them and claiming he had tried to message her. Yet Michael was prepared. Every time Veronica approached him, his small recorder was running. Every conversation, every whisper, every scheme, it was all captured, proof of her relentless advances. One night, after another tense dinner where Veronica complimented Michael's cooking with a lingering touch on his shoulder, Michael finally confronted her in the kitchen. His voice was low but sharp. "This is the last time, Veronica. If you ever try to destroy my marriage again, you'll regret it." Veronica raised her chin defiantly. "Or what? You'll tell Amelia? You'll break her heart and watch her turn against you." "No, Michael. She'll believe me before she believes you. Sisters stand together." Michael's eyes narrowed. "You think so? You have no idea what I've been keeping." But Veronica laughed, mistaking his words for bluff. The very next week, she launched her biggest move. While Amelia was in the garden with Ethan, Veronica stormed into the living room, her voice trembling as though she were on the verge of tears. She clutched at her blouse, pulling it slightly to one side. "Amelia," she cried. "Your husband, he's been after me. I can't stay here another night. I didn't want to tell you, but I can't keep it inside anymore." Amelia's face went pale. She turned slowly toward Michael, her eyes wide with shock. The world seemed to freeze in that moment, the marriage, the trust, the family bond, all hanging by a fragile thread. Michael stood still, calm but not cold. He had been waiting for this. "Amelia," he said softly, "before you believe anything, I want you to hear the truth." From his pocket, he pulled out the small recorder. He pressed play. The living room filled with Veronica's voice. "Why do you pretend you don't want me? Every man breaks eventually. If you were mine, you think she'll believe you over me? Sisters stand together." The color drained from Veronica's face. She lunged forward, trying to snatch the recorder, but Michael stepped back. Amelia's trembling hands covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes, not tears of doubt in her husband, but tears of betrayal from her own blood. Veronica stammered, her pride shattering. "Amelia, I was only joking, I didn't mean." But Amelia's voice cut through, sharp with pain. "Joking? You tried to destroy my marriage. You tried to ruin the only man who has ever loved me honestly. And you're my sister." The silence that followed was unbearable. Little Ethan peeked in from the garden, sensing the storm but too young to understand. Daniel, who had been visiting that afternoon, stood frozen near the doorway, his young face filled with disbelief at the sister he once admired. Margaret and Mr. Smith arrived shortly after, called urgently by Amelia. When the truth was revealed, Margaret wept as though her heart had been torn in two. Mr. Smith shook his head in sorrow, unable to hide his disappointment. "Veronica," he said quietly, "we raised you better than this. Desire has blinded you, and envy has poisoned your heart." For once, Veronica had no words. The weight of her shame pressed down on her, crushing the pride that had always carried her. The setup had backfired. The hunter had been trapped in her own snare. And the family would never look at her the same way again. The living room felt like a courtroom. Silence hung thick in the air, broken only by the faint hum of the recorder still playing Veronica's incriminating words. Amelia sat on the couch, her body trembling, her eyes fixed on the sister she had once trusted with her deepest secrets. Veronica stood in the middle of the room, frozen, her lips quivering but unable to form a defense. The walls of pride she had built for years had crumbled in a single moment. Margaret's sobs filled the silence. She clutched little Ethan in her arms, shielding the child from a scene he could not yet understand. Mr. Smith stood tall, though his shoulders seemed heavier than ever. His voice, when it came, was deep with grief. "Veronica, marriage is sacred. Family is sacred. Yet you tried to destroy both. Your envy, your unfaithfulness, your lies, look at what they have cost you. Look at the shame you brought on yourself, on your son, on this family." Veronica lowered her eyes, tears streaming freely. For once, her willful tongue failed her. She wanted to speak, to defend, to justify, but there was no defense left. Amelia wiped her tears and finally spoke. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "I welcomed you into my home, Veronica. I gave you my love. Michael treated you like family. And this is how you repay us? By trying to ruin everything we built?" Her words cut sharper than any blade. Veronica's knees weakened, and she sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Michael, though deeply wounded by the ordeal, remained calm. He placed the recorder on the table as undeniable evidence. His integrity had carried him through, but the cost had been heavy. The innocence of trust within the family was gone. Daniel, the youngest, stood quietly near the corner, his young mind absorbing every detail. His eyes burned with disappointment at the sister he had once admired. He had always believed that family was untouchable, that blood was stronger than betrayal. But tonight, his understanding of human weakness grew deeper. When the storm of words finally quieted, Margaret spoke through her tears. "We cannot undo what has been done. But we can choose what happens next." She looked at Amelia with tender eyes. "Daughter, the decision is yours. Do you want your sister to stay here, or do you want her gone?" Amelia's heart wavered. She was torn between love for her sister and the pain of betrayal. She glanced at Michael, who gave her a gentle nod, silently assuring her that whatever choice she made, he would stand by her. After a long silence, Amelia's voice broke. "Veronica, you cannot stay here. Not after this. I love you, but I cannot live under the same roof with a sister who tried to take my husband from me. For the sake of my marriage, for the sake of my peace, you must leave." Veronica sobbed harder, but she did not argue. She had lost the battle. She had lost her dignity. She had lost her safe place. Margaret wept again, but even she knew Amelia was right. "You will go back to our house for now," she told Veronica gently. "You and Ethan will not be abandoned, but you cannot remain here." That night, Veronica packed her things in silence. Her pride was gone, replaced by shame so heavy she could hardly look anyone in the eye. When she picked up Ethan, the boy clung to Amelia, refusing to let go. "I want to stay here," he cried. Amelia's heart broke. She hugged the child tightly, whispering, "I'll always love you, Ethan. You'll always be welcome here." Veronica turned away quickly, tears blurring her vision. She could not bear the sight of her son preferring the sister she had betrayed. As Margaret led Veronica and Ethan out of the house, Mr. Smith turned back to Michael. He extended his hand, his voice steady though sorrowful. "Thank you for standing strong. You have shown the kind of man you truly are. Few men would have handled this with such restraint." Michael nodded humbly. "I only did what was right. Amelia deserves nothing less." That night, Amelia and Michael sat together in the quiet of their bedroom. Amelia rested her head on his shoulder, tears still flowing. "I almost doubted you," she whispered. "I almost let her lies blind me." Michael kissed her forehead softly. "The truth always speaks, Amelia. And love, real love, cannot be broken by lies." Daniel, sitting alone in his room, prayed silently. At 12 years younger than his sisters, he had just witnessed the destructive power of envy and betrayal. In his heart, he promised himself never to walk that path. The family would heal, slowly but surely. Scars remained, but the bond between Amelia and Michael grew even stronger. Margaret and Mr. Smith continued to love their wayward daughter, praying she would one day find redemption. And Veronica? She carried her shame like a shadow, a reminder of what envy had cost her. She had lost more than a home. She had lost trust, honor, and the respect of everyone who once admired her. The truth had unmasked her. The lesson was clear: betrayal might shake a home, but integrity can save it. This story reminds us that temptation destroys, but truth and integrity always prevail. What would you have done if you were in Amelia's shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story that touches the soul.